Hello, everybody. It is Sunday afternoon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our Steelers post-game show here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network by Joe Starkey, Post-Gazette sports columnist. Paul Zeiss is usually in this seat, but he is actually reporting today, so fear not. Nothing is wrong with Paul. He is down in the bowels of Acrisure Stadium, gathering some quotes, gathering some reaction. We're hoping he'll be able to stop by here at some point. But if he does not, definitely check out his work on postgazette.com and definitely subscribe because he and I will reconvene on Thursday for our usual show. But Joe, how are you?
Man, I'm doing well. That was a pretty entertaining football game. That was the Steelers exerting some physical dominance in that game. I heard Mike Tomlin talking beforehand about comparing it to a boxing match, sort of a battle of attrition, and they just wore out the and that's a good Chargers team. I know they had injuries, so did the Steelers. Steelers lost a very physical player in Fautanu during the week. They lost Alex Highsmith. Technically, they're without their starting quarterback, right? Although I think that's changed. That was a battle, and the Steelers put it on them. That was impressive.
Yes, we are going to get into the particulars of all of that, but I think that's a great big picture description of what we witnessed, Joe. Before we get too far into the show, just want to thank our primary sponsor. It's Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Joe, you alluded to the quarterback conversation with Justin Fields. I don't know if we saw everything that people wanted to see today because I think a lot of people want to see Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, or there's a weird subset that wants to see Mason Rudolph for those last 3 games of last season. But I think we saw a lot of what people wanted to see from Justin Fields, some big plays. He was passing the ball a lot. We saw some volume because of the way the running game was going on early on. I think it's like a 7, 8 out of 10 performance from him today, Joe.
Oh, I'm going at least 9, Adam. I'm going at least 9. That's a very good defense. Very good. He had no running game for a lot of the game. He was behind the sticks a lot in the game, and he was darn near perfect. He was 25 of 32 for 245. He had the 1 pick, sort of a bad bounce. I thought he was outstanding, and I thought he laid claim to the number 1 quarterback job. In my mind, watching that game today, the Steelers have a new quarterback. His name is Justin Fields. I give him a 9 on that game today because I think that's how good that Chargers defense is. Even after they lose Joey Bosa, he was just really, really accurate with a lot of things working against him. I thought he was great.
Joe, Mike Tomlin likes to talk a lot about team building and getting better throughout the season. And the thing that I'm thinking about, especially in terms of Justin Fields, is I think we're seeing the progression with him, the building of this team around him. And the further into it we get, the harder it is for me to imagine bringing in Russell Wilson to all that cohesion you're building cold turkey. I mean, it's more than just, I think, a performance thing. It's if you really believe in this team building mantra and the destination, how can you take him out midstream when he's making obvious steps every week?
You can't. It's as simple as that. If Russell Wilson is declared 100% healthy on Monday, which I don't think he will be, I think there's 0 chance that he would play next week. That's why I say the story today is that Justin Fields is the new quarterback. You can't take out a guy after a performance like that. He was also, like I said, behind the sticks a lot. Their field position was awful for 2.5 quarters. He just made winning plays the whole day. He really did. He made winning plays the whole day. I'm incredibly impressed with the guy. He never looked rattled. He never looked sped up. He was in rhythm. He was doing things that I didn't think Justin Fields could do, which was operate an offense that really looked on time for a lot of the game. And I know there weren't a lot of points scored, but they had some lengthy drives, several huge 3rd down conversions. He looks very, very comfortable in the pocket today. making little moves to free himself up, taking a sack when it needed to be taken. I just can't tell you how impressed I was with the guy.
Well, and he scores the first touchdown with his legs, Joe, and that's not an insignificant thing considering we're through 3 games and they've still only got 3 total touchdowns. Something else that I was just thinking about during the game was I believe Russell Wilson can still move. I believe he can still scramble, but I don't know if he can run, Joe, the way we see these kind of design plays for Justin Fields. And it doesn't always show up with the touchdown. Sometimes it just shows up with the ability. I think there was one drive early in the game. He had to pick up 2 yards to get the first down and move the chain. And he was just super quick, and it looked easy for him. I don't know if that would look easy for Russell Wilson, considering the injury and considering his age.
Yeah, I mean, that part of the game today really didn't work, the design run part with Justin, but they have to respect it. And I thought by the end of the game, the Steelers' offensive line really was starting to exert some dominance. That was sort of a classic Steelers win, going as far back as you want to go. You know, you win the game defensively, you shut down the other team's running game, you beat up the other team's quarterback, and then by the 4th quarter, you just pound them to death. That's how they write it up, you know, in Steelers history books. If there was an all-time playbook and game plan book for how the Steelers are supposed to win football games, you saw it today.
Last thing on the quarterbacks, I wanted to ask you, Joe. Do you think we have at least a Marc-Andre Fleury in the 2017 playoffs situation where, Mike Tomlin may not want to fully commit to Justin Fields for, whatever reason, to massage Russell Wilson's ego, anything. But do you think it'll be kind of like it was at the end of last season where you get Mason Rudolph in there, he's the hot hand, and Mike Tomlin makes the decision to stay with him because he was the hot hand, and it was the end of the season, so we never got to see what happens when that ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, I think the Steelers have a new quarterback, and that's Justin Fields. Now, if Wilson is declared out for next week and Fields were to go out and completely bomb, then we could have a different discussion, and nobody's going to be making any announcements this week. But the way he played today, there's 0 chance you take him out if Russell Wilson's declared healthy. And if he plays this way again next week, he's just going to stay in there. It makes all the sense in the world, too, because of the 2 quarterbacks they acquired. This is the one that you obviously would have pegged for a long-term future if either of them had that here. And he's done nothing to dissuade the Steelers thinking there. And if anything, they have to be more comfortable with that idea.
Is there any conversation to be had, Joe, about trading Russell Wilson, or do you want to see him here even if Fields is the long-term starter, just to give you that insurance and not having to turn to Kyle Allen if, for example, Justin Fields gets injured running the ball and kind of goes Lamar Jackson style down?
I'd like to have a backup that I can trust more than Kyle Allen. I'm not interested in a trade right now.
Yeah, I've seen that mentioned in some quarters just because there's need for quarterbacks around the country. As guys go down, people probably will be interested in Russell Wilson. But I think that's the same reason you got to be interested in Russell Wilson if you're the Steelers when he's already on your team, because that's what a big perk of the whole offseason was for me, is that you had 2 guys that you could feel reasonably good about regardless of what order they play in. Joe, let's move on to the running game. I mean, man, they looked great late. End up with 114 yards, average 3.7 per carry. That's not great, but it's not terrible. But it was 1.6 at the end of the first half, and I just that was kind of rough. What was your read on how the day went for the running game?
That the other guys get paychecks too, and I thought the Chargers played really well against the run. And what opened up the game for the Steelers was Justin Fields hitting big throws on 3rd downs or long yardage situations.
Looks like we lost Joe there for a second. I tend to agree with him, though. I lost you for a second. Just go back to that point a little bit.
Yeah, that I mentioned that the other guys get paid too. They're a really good defense, and you don't just line up and smash it down their throat. Sometimes it takes a while to crack the rock, if you will. And Fields made up for that by, sort of with a de facto run game with some of those short passes. They didn't explode offensively. They took up a lot of time, kept their own defense fresh, and essentially did what a running game would do for you. Long drives, don't turn it over except the one, and keep your defense fresh. So they made up for that. And then finally, by the end, they cracked through.
Yeah, they did. I especially love the way they used Cordero Patterson at the end. You could tell he was just so much fresher than the guys on the other team, and he was just pounding them into submission. He ends up with 4 carries for 33 yards, 8.3 yards per carry on the average. So that's really good. I love the way they kind of used him as a closer, and I think that's something that we didn't see often from the Steelers last season, was having a kind of closer to go to. Joe, I was just talking about Cordero Patterson, how I loved how they used him late.
I can't hear you, Adam, for some reason.
How about now, Joe? Can everyone hear me in the chat? Well, I'm just going to continue then. And Najee Harris ends up 18 carries for 70 yards. He averages 3.9 on the day. Didn't see a ton of Jalen Warren. Haven't seen him a ton so far. Can you hear me now, Joe?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Cool. Nah, no problem. But I was just talking about, I love the way they used Cordero Patterson late today.
Yeah, man, I was a little down on that last week. I was trying to figure out what Arthur Smith was thinking, because that was Najee time last week when Cordero came in, but I was wrong. You know, he still clearly has a lot in the tank here, and he ran like a battering ram type running back at the end of the game. That was great to have those fresh legs in there. So credit to Arthur Smith and Cordero Patterson. I thought he was a big part of finishing off that game.
It's striking to me how tall he is too, Joe. I like the way he comes out of the backfield. He looks like a gazelle to me. He just looks different than a lot of guys in the NFL today.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't look like your typical running back for sure. But he can credit him, man. He can still make plays. It wasn't like everything was wide open for him. He was running with a purpose. I was impressed.
I think there's going to be a lot of conversation this week about Calvin Austin, obviously after the long touchdown, but it wasn't just the long touchdown, Joe. He finishes with 4 receptions for 95 yards. Definitely one of the better games of his career. Scotty Miller got involved today, 2 catches for 31 yards. It was easily the best day for Steelers receivers not named George Pickens of the season. It kind of evoked week 3 last season for me, Joe, when Calvin Austin had the long touchdown against the Raiders in Las Vegas. And then we saw what happened with him from there on out. He wasn't really a big part of this offense. Do you see anything different in him this season? And do you think he's going to be a bigger part of this offense moving forward than he was a year ago?
Yeah, and I wonder if that has something to do with the design of the offense. There was a lot of throws right down the seams today, right along the hash marks today, and guys were open. And to Fields' credit, you know, the question will be, did they hit those plays today, and will they hit them more this year because of the quarterback or because of the design of the offense? Maybe it's a little bit of both. But Calvin Austin looked like a different guy today. You know, he had the one big play last year, really, against Oakland. Today, it looked like he was actually part of the offense. And then Scotty Miller, you know, he has a little bit of that short space quickness that they've lacked. He made a couple quick twitch type plays, spinning on the sideline, and then he had another big play in the second half. I was impressed with him too. And, you know, there's been a lot of consternation for good reason about what they have behind Pickens. And today you saw 2 guys making plays.
Do you think after today we can put to rest the notion that they don't need a second and third receiver in this offense? Because I've been told, you know, in the comments and by people all offseason, oh, it's going to be, you know, they're going to run so much they're never going to need the second receiver. I've said, listen, this is not Navy's offense. This is the NFL. And I think you saw today the difference in terms of explosiveness and big plays when you got those guys involved.
I'm not ready to put it to rest, no, by any means. But it was definitely a huge step in the right direction. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were still on the lookout for a clear number 2 receiver. But today against a good defense, those guys did the job.
I mean more in the sense, Joe, that like you do need one, and the way those guys played today proved it. And whether it's somebody that is in the building or someone you might be able to get before the trade deadline, I don't think this is as conservative in offense as some people, have imagined it to be at different points, when you can get things going the right way.
So you mean the other receivers? I'm not sure what you're saying there. The
I'm
performance
saying
of Austin and Miller proved what to you?
They proved that the value for a number 2 receiver in this offense, when someone's playing that well and able to play that well, that you can use multiple receivers in this offense and not just rely on one guy.
Yeah, I would agree on that. And Freiermuth too. He had the one drop at the end of the half, but I thought he had some big plays. I think one of them got called back, if I recall correctly. So today, at least, they had some pretty diverse weaponry in the pass game and a quarterback who was making it happen. And again, we go back to the design or the quarterback himself. It's probably a little bit of both.
We're going to get into the defense here in a second. Joe, last question I had on offense. What's going on with all these illegal formation penalties and not getting the correct number of guys on the wide receiver? I'll ask that about the Steelers today, but I've noticed a lot of it around the NFL. I know there's been a crackdown, but I'm surprised we're 3 weeks into the season and still seeing, such a basic concept as have enough guys on the line of scrimmage getting called so often.
Yeah, I mean, Romo spelled it out that you need 7 guys on there, and they didn't have it. So it would seem that that's a coaching miscue there, unless those guys are coached up that if they notice it, you got to get up to the line. But it didn't seem like they were picking on somebody. I forget what was the first game of the NFL season where I think the Ravens got called for it a bunch of times, and it was like, that's a pretty ticky-tack call. Today it seemed very, very straightforward and clear cut, and that the Steelers just were blatantly out of alignment.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think in that game, Joe, it was offensive linemen that were trying to get the first step back, and they got flagged for that. Today it was just flat out the Steelers, backs and receivers were not on the line. So I don't understand how that happens, but that's certainly something they're going to have to get straightened out, because if they're going to play this way, Joe, you don't need dumb penalties like that. Yeah,
although I don't think they had a penalty in the first half. How many did they have for the game today? I thought for the most part they cleaned things up today. If you look at the numbers,
I thought it was now. They had 3 for 15 yards total. So a good day overall.
You'll take that for sure, right?
Yeah, a good day overall, but still, I mean, it would have been better if you don't get those easily avoided ones that, if they score a touchdown on that drive too, Joe, the game's over. And then ultimately they get it with the Austin touchdown. Maybe they thought, Heineke's not going to score on us, so we're not going to do anything crazy, but still you would have liked to see them get 7 on that drive, because I think the game would have been over at that point. All right, let's get into the defense. Before we do, just want to thank another sponsor. It's Goldberg, Persky & White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Joe, I'm excited to kind of talk about the defense here, because this is just the 3rd game in a row that it felt like they beat the opposing team into absolute submission. They're putting up the graphics early about how, TJ Watt was not getting around Joe Alt to get to Justin Herbert. And then pretty much from that moment on, the Steelers just mauled them. And they look incredibly dominant, Joe. I've seen a lot of good Steelers defenses in my time. You've seen more. But this one, at least early on, is feeling pretty special as long as you can keep guys healthy.
Well, that's the key. I mean, some others early in years look pretty special too. And then some attrition kicked in, some injury, but who knows if that'll happen. For now, yeah, man, they look great. Even with Highsmith leaving the game, Herbert came in and was just a dynamo. He's completely surprised. I think Slater was still in the game at that point, if I'm not mistaken. Whoever was at tackle at that point was totally surprised by this guy's quickness. And I thought everybody played well. There was one blown coverage on the touchdown. But other than that, TJ Watt made, a play late in the game, as he often does, to sort of seal things. Cam Heyward was great. Their inside linebacker play was really good. And the secondary played well. That's a really good quarterback, by the way, in Justin Herbert. Hold on one second, Adam. I'll be right back.
All right, Joe. Yeah, I mean, I thought everyone did play well to get to Joe's point. You go through the box score. Patrick Queen, I think, had his best game as a Steeler, 8 tackles. He had the pass defended. You had Cam Heyward got 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. I think it's his best game of the season. Landon Roberts gets home for a sack. Nick Herbert, you guys in the in the comments are talking a lot about him. Obviously, the 2 sacks, the forced fumble, huge day for him. TJ Watt gets the big sack as well. And man, it wasn't just that Justin Herbert went into the day injured, and they ended up knocking him out of the game. I think a lot of us went into the afternoon with an expectation that might happen, but I think you got an idea for how physical these Steelers were as Joe Alt went out late in the game. And then on the other side, obviously Joey Bosa gets knocked out. So the physicality and the brutality that this team is playing with, I'm not going to compare it to those early 2000 Steelers because that was a different NFL. You were allowed to do different things, but in today's NFL, man, in a lot of ways, you just feel like this is the closest thing that we might see to that. Who else had nice games? Deshaun Elliott steps up again, 5 tackles in the game, 4 solo. He's always been at the top. He's always around the ball. I think this was his quietest game today, but he was such a solid, quiet ad for this team. Dante Jackson, 5 tackles. He's up there in the statistical accounting. Minkah Fitzpatrick, kind of a quieter day. I know a lot of people are concerned about where's the picks, where's the interceptions, but I think it's good sometimes when he's not showing up as high in the box score because that means he's not having to step up in run support in ways that he was last season. I think you want him to step up and run support voluntarily and because he's trying to make big plays and not because he's basically going to have to make up for the deficiencies of the inside linebackers. So I think on a day you saw Patrick Queen, top out, on the box score in terms of tackles, it's not a surprise that you'd see Minkah Fitzpatrick step back a little bit. Peyton Wilson had the one big hit as well. I believe it was on J.K. Dobbins at one point. He ends up with 2 tackles on the day. Beanie Bishop, kind of quiet, but, overall a really solid day for this defense. I'll ask you guys in the chat, who do you think the most valuable player on this defense is right now, other than TJ Watt? I think obviously he's the straw that stirs the drink, to use old Sports Center parlance. But who do you pick right now as the number 2 most valuable? Is it still Cam Heyward as the guy that got the big contract extension, stepped up, and it's kind of looked like his old self so far this season? Is that the big difference for the Steelers defense? I think we got Paul Zeiss hopping in here. Paul, you're muted here. Unmute yourself, and then we'll get your reaction. How are you, Paul?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. Joe just hopped off here for a second, so I'll get your big picture thoughts on the game here.
I think that the team is progressing and getting better, and that especially is true on offense. And I know that people are, get nervous or whatever you want to say because the offense doesn't score a lot, and the offense, is conservative and not all that fun to watch at times. But I tell you, I thought as the game went on, they offensive line and the way they wanted to play, they really imposed their will on the Chargers, and were able to grind them. I think the other part of it is I don't think there's any question that this is Justin Fields' team now. I think that's no question about it. I don't even know why you would even entertain going to Russell Wilson at this point. He's gotten better. He's gotten better every week. The way they want to play, he seems to fit that style perfectly. His ability to run a little bit is such a huge key to what they're able to do. So to me, I was just down in the locker room. I was talking to I'm going to do a couple of stories about the offensive line. Talking to the offensive linemen, they were basically like, yeah, midway through the third quarter, we knew it was over. Like we knew the Chargers didn't want to play anymore. The defense was out there. They're getting tired. They're getting worn down. We were imposing our will. And so I think that, overall, we know what the defense is going to be, and the defense is really, really good. But offensively, this was by far their best game in my mind. I mean, Justin Fields threw for more than 200 yards. They scored 2 touchdowns. You know, if they get to 20 points in any given game, Adam, I think they have a chance to win.
Paul, what was the vibe? You mentioned Justin Fields. What was the vibe about him downstairs when you were in the locker room? I mean, Joe and I were just talking about, the team building that Mike Tomlin likes to talk about all the time. And it just feels like the team, it's not just that Justin Fields is playing well, he's cohesive within the offense. And it seems hard for me to believe you're going to take that guy out and stick in Russell Wilson cold turkey.
Well, I talked to some players down there, and all of them, I asked them, have you seen the improvement in Justin Fields every week? And they all basically said he was good from day one. Like, I think it's very clear, Adam, in talking to them, that it's very clear that that's who their quarterback is. I think if you went to Russell Wilson now, you would lose a lot of momentum. You would lose a lot of, the good vibes and the good feelings that you have about this team and the way they're playing right now. I think you lose a lot of that if you go to Justin Fields or go to Russell Wilson right now. So in my mind, I think the team and everybody around the team kind of understands this is Justin Fields' show now. He's your guy. And here's the thing. What gets very, very interesting is let's play this out. Let's say he goes and they, go 12-5 and he plays and he gets better every week and he even win a playoff game. You know what, Adam? That quarterback position that they're paying nothing for this year, all of a sudden they're going to have to make a really big decision because if he does that, now all of a sudden he becomes, a $35, $40 million player, period. So that's way down the road, but I'm just saying this is something we've talked about. I feel like it's important to note that, the one thing he could be doing is playing himself into, elite or whatever you want to call it, starting quarterback money.
Yeah, he's playing himself into having a market. And I think that's what puts the Steelers in a tough position and why, we had those conversations. I remember there were shows you and I did, late in July, early August saying, should they give him a deal now and lock him up for the next couple of years at something like 13-14 in case he does well? And they made the decision not to do that. And that, you're right. I mean, $35-40 million sounds like a lot of money in today's NFL when guys are getting 60. I mean, that's what you're paying a solid quarterback these days. So certainly something to keep in mind. Paul, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the running. You mentioned that the offensive line knew that they were taking control, but I don't think it looked like that in the box score. What was your read on why things started slow and then ended in such dominant fashion?
Well, I just think they wore them down. I think they were able to wear them down. This was always going to be a game that was a battle of wills. And, I thought I'll tell you one place where I thought that the Chargers sort of, in some ways, conceded a little bit. After the Steelers, let me see if I get this straight. After the Steelers tied it up 10-10, the Chargers came out. First of all, they made a horrible decision on the kickoff, and so they ended up starting on their own 10. But then they came out and they threw the ball 3 times. Where they had been running it with some, degree of success, they went out and threw it 3 times, and now all of a sudden they're way behind the chains. Now they got bailed out because of an interception, but at the end of the day, I thought, why are you basically just, especially with Herbert, that was ended up being the series where they got Herbert hurt. I thought that series was almost like we don't think we can, run the ball and push you guys around anymore. I think that was part of where they're at.
Yeah, that was my interpretation as well. Paul, one of our favorite hobby horses on our Thursday show, but also on these live streams, is talking about the receivers. Obviously, a great day for Calvin Austin. Scotty Miller made some plays. I asked Joe this question, and I'll ask you this question: did we put to rest the notion today, Paul, that you don't need a receiver other than George Pickens for this offense to look good? I think it's not a mistake that those guys played well and that the offense did well.
I need to see more. I need to see more. Scotty Miller made a play when but the Chargers guy tried to make a hero play and go for an interception as opposed to just staying in front of him. And if he does, he stops him from getting a first down. There was a nice play by Calvin Austin down the middle. That's one of those ones where it was a nice play, but I'm not ready. I'm going to say this, and this is probably going to be somewhat controversial. I just don't know how good the Chargers really are. I know that they've looked okay for a couple of games, but do you see them winning more than 9 games?
I don't know. They got some good players, Paul, that made some plays I'm
going to tell you, their offensive line is not good. For
That's
all
fair.
of the blustering about how much they're going to impose their will and run the ball. At one point they were like 20 carries for 58 yards or something. They couldn't block anybody that was on the edge of the Steelers. It didn't matter who it was. Herbert, T.J. Watt, Highsmith before he got hurt. Didn't matter. I'm just saying, and I know people say, oh, you're a hater and all that other crap. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is I'm just not sure how good they are, so I need to see a little bit more. I think the Steelers are clearly a good football team, though, and I think they're getting better. But I'm not ready after one game to declare that Scotty Miller and Calvin Austin are the answer to the Steelers' problems.
Oh, that's not the angle that I was trying to ask. It was just more like if you have receivers playing well, I think we're seeing like how much better the offense can be if you have guys making plays. And yes, the question is going to be, can they do that consistently? I just think there's been such a discourse about the Steelers not needing a second receiver, and that's what I think was put to rest.
I see what you said.
Those guys are going to be the number 2. Different conversation, but I think the offense looked good today because you had the number 2 receiver in this offense step up for 95 yards.
Right. Well, I think that's an important thing to me. That's an important distinction. You're right. When the second and third receiver play make plays, obviously it changes things. I thought Justin Fields made some really good throws, though. So, again, I know they're 3-0, and it's great. And the Broncos look pretty good today. I don't know that they've beaten a playoff team yet. I'll just say that. So, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think next week they'll probably beat up the Colts, right? And because that quarterback looks terrible, but I think there's some tougher games that'll be better measuring sticks down the road. But again, you can only beat who you have to play. I think that the good thing about these 3 games to start with is that it afforded them the luxury of let's play defense. Let's just try not to make mistakes on offense and see if we can build on it each week and get a little better, which is what they've done.
Paul, Joe and I talked about the defense and how they just, wore the Chargers offense down and beat them into submission. And one person who was a big part of that today was Nick Herbert. I wanted to ask you about him. How valuable is he to this team? Should he be pushing Alex Highsmith, as some people in the comments have been saying, for playing time? And could he be a double-digit sack guy right now with the right opportunity?
Yeah, and I think one of the things about it is, Adam, I don't know this an either or with him and Alex Highsmith. I think you have the luxury, if you have him and Highsmith and T.J. Watt, you have the luxury of getting Highsmith and Watt ample rest and preserving their legs a little bit so that, A, at the end of games, they're fresh, and B, at the end of the season, they're more fresh. So, to me, it's a depth thing. And he's clearly proving that when he's in the game, there's not going to be a drop-off of, any substantial amount. So if that's the case, then what happens there, you're able to get Watt rest. You're able to get him some plays off early in games so that in the fourth quarter, now you've got a real problem if you're the other team because you got a fresh T.J. Watt, and you've got fresh Alex Highsmith, and you have a fresh Herbert. That changes everything.
The other thing I noticed on defense today, Paul, Joey Porter Jr. gets beat badly on the Chargers' only touchdown. He had the penalties last week. He's not been grading phenomenally in the analytics early on. Are you concerned about him at all, or do you look at the fact that the Chargers did practically nothing in the second half and say he's going to be just fine?
Joey Porter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joey Porter is the least of the Steelers' worries. I think he'll keep getting better and better and better and better and better. And I just feel like he's a guy. He's going to make mistakes because he's still young. He's young and he's aggressive, so he's going to make some mistakes. There's going to be some miscommunications here and there, but for the most part, I think he's played reasonably well for 3 weeks, and I expect him to get better.
What did you make of the Chargers' decision to go with Justin Herbert in hindsight? Obviously, he comes in with the high ankle sprain, goes out injured because it seemed like he re-aggravated the injury on the one sack. I believe it was by Watt and Heyward late in the game. But then you saw that they could not move the ball once Heineke came in. Was Jim Harbaugh just acknowledging reality that they were going to lose this game if you don't start Justin Herbert in it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's malpractice. Here's what's malpractice, Adam. Okay, they've had him for what now? 3 years, 4 years, and that guy gets the hell beat out of him every single week because they've never gotten or made their offensive line better. I mean, I don't understand how you can have a quarterback like that and you don't have an offensive line that's really, really good that protects him. So he's the guy that, to me, he's going to be hurt all season long. He's going to be beat up like this all season long. And a high ankle sprain is something that doesn't heal quick anyway. There was some thought that because they play the Chiefs next week, they were going to hold him out of the game. They were going to hold him out of this game, just sort of concede, well, we'll probably lose this game or whatever if we don't play him. We'll get Heineke ready all week, and then, we'll see what happens. And then hopefully he's healthy for the Chiefs. But to me, I think Jim Harbaugh probably thought that in playing him, they could run the football and run out the clock and do exactly what the Steelers were talking about and not really have to put him in position where he had to throw it, and therefore he would be protected. But it just didn't happen for him. So, I mean, here's the other thing. What was the, number one knock on the Chargers last year with Brandon Staley? You remember? Self-destruction. Making foolish plays and big mistakes at the wrong time to lose games week after week after week. Would 40 yards in penalties, including 3 that gave them first downs on the same drive, would that count as a meltdown? So, I mean, the Chargers have been the same team as long as I can remember them. I know Jim Harbaugh is there to change the culture and all that other stuff. They've got a ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think the outcome seemed to be in doubt on the scoreboard for longer than the Steelers just did dominate that second half in ways you rarely see. Any final thoughts on the week, Paul, before we sign off here? Are you going to watch? I got this. Are you going to watch? Did the 78 promos during the game cause you to want to watch Matlock later?
Yeah, no, it did not. But I saw a number of people on social media talking about that, so it must be. Maybe there'll be parties later tonight. Speaking of parties, I just saw something flash across the Pittsburgh scanner, on Twitter, which apparently a bunch of Steeler fans at Tequila Cowboy have tied one on a little too hard. And so there's all kinds of nonsense and shenanigans going on over there. But other than that, great day here at the stadium for this team. Great win for them. And now, they just got to continue to refine some of the rough edges, see if they can keep getting better. They'll get a little healthier each week with some of their guys like Ciamalo coming back and all that other stuff. Hey, I'm just going to tell you, I think that this is a team that's going to get better, and if they stay healthy on defense, you know what? They could be a real problem for teams down the stretch and into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think next week against the the Colts is going to be another game, just because of the way the schedule unfolds later on. And I'm interested to see in 2 weeks now you've got the Cowboys coming to town. That's going to be possibly a big game, but watch 425 here. We've got Ravens, Cowboys, so that's going to tell us a lot about both of those teams. Paul, thanks for joining me. For Joe Starkey, I'm Adam Bittner. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the stream. We've got a lot more coming at you this week. North Shore Drive with Christopher Carter, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Chip Taylor Football with Brian Backo on Tuesday. Paul and I will be back on Thursday, and then we will be live streaming next week. So lots of content. Subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right, let's see it.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.